Today we're doing an FTP test to see where I am at fitness-wise and give me a baseline to go into 2025 with, because I've got some big events lined up that I'm going to have to train properly for. And so far in my cycling journey, which is about 1 year long, I've only ridden for vibes. I haven't done any structured training. I basically started cycling properly, road cycling at least, in Feb this year when I got my first road bike, and since then I've been riding fairly frequently. My Strava stats for the year, just to give you a bit of context as to the level of rider I am. Average distance per week, 70 Ks, so not a lot, but it's better than now, and we have done a total of 5,854 kilometres this year, which ain't a bad debut year. In terms of events and stuff that I've done this year on the bike, I haven't actually done that many things. I did a crit race, a Cat 3-4 crit race where I got absolutely spanked, finished second from last, I think, other than the people who crashed out in DNF, so that was a tough day. I did an Ironman 70.3 out in Austria, Zell am See. That was obviously a 90k bike stint with 1,000 metres of elevation, and I got round that in 3 hours, just under 3 hours, so 30 k's an hour average over 90k with a bit of elevation. Gives you an idea as to sort of where I'm at. So I wouldn't say I'm a beginner rider, but I'm definitely not up there. I'd say like I'm at the lower echelon of intermediate at this point. Yeah, we're gonna do an FTP test, otherwise known as a functional threshold power test. Now I ain't gonna lie to you, I don't know the science behind this stuff. All I know is that it's indicative of the level of power you can hold for about an hour, and the figure that you actually get as a result of the test you use as the baseline to form all of your training around. So there's a couple of different ways you can do an FTP test. The two most common ways, I believe, are 20-minute all-out power test, so you just ride as hard as you can for 20 minutes, or there is one called the ramp test, which is the one I'm going to be doing on Zwift. So I think basically a 20-minute all-out power test, I wouldn't really know where to start. I think managing the effort just adds a level of difficulty that I can't be arsed with. With the ramp test, the way that one works is it starts off easy at about 100 watts or something, and then every minute power increases by 20 watts. So it just gets harder every minute, and you just have to cling on for as long as you possibly can until you cannot pedal any further whilst remaining seated. And that one just feels a simpler thing to do because all you have to focus on is spinning your legs rather than managing your power output and stuff like you would have to for the 20-minute test. What I will do is potentially do a 20-minute test later down the line once I have a good idea as to my actual FTP numbers, so I've got something to base a power output on for 20 minutes, because at the minute I wouldn't know where to start. Actually, I can look at my Strava to see what my best power efforts are over different durations. That might give us a decent idea as to what I can expect to get today. Okay, so my best 5-second power is 1020 watts. My best 30-second power output is 787 watts. Best 1 minute is 566 watts. And then my best 20-minute power output is 248 watts is my best 20-minute power output, and that was more or less a full beans effort up Snake's Pass. So I reckon that's going to be fairly accurate or fairly close to what I'm going to get at this FTP test. You'd expect a little bit more than that, so maybe like 255, maybe 260 if I'm lucky. So I have put a story out on my Instagram asking people to guess what they think the FTP is. I've had some wild guesses from 100 watts, which is lovely, through to 340 watts, which is a touch optimistic, I think. But anyway, let's get into it and see how we do. Ooh, actually, before we get into it, very important, my body specs, the weight. I am currently weighing in about 75 kgs, which is very important in the world of FTP testing because FTPs are all relative to the rider. For example, heavier riders are probably going to put down more power, but on the bike they're carrying more weight. Lighter riders, less power, but they're carrying less weight. So the way in which, like the common denominator, or how you would actually compare how decent your FTP is, isn't necessarily the power number that you get, but it's by a watts per kilogram calculation, which we'll discuss after I actually do the test. So here we go, FTP ramp test. I chose to do this one on Zwift. I know Ruvi have their version as well. I've been using Ruvi quite a lot actually for my indoor training. I just thought I'd switch back to Zwift for this one. They do have an FTP ramp test light as well, which is for lighter weight riders. Anything under 60 kg or 65 kg, I think it was. I've obviously just opted for the normal one, being 75 kg. So the way the test works is you have 5 minutes of free riding, basically just to get a little bit of a warm up in, and then you can see on the left hand side it starts 1 minute at 100 watts, and increases in increments of 20 watts every minute that goes by, all the way up to about 640 watts, I think. But if you are lasting that long, you are literally Tadej Pogacar, so I didn't have to worry about that. This was going to be a fairly short test for me, I think about 15-20 minutes max. So I'm not going to bore you with the first 10 minutes. They breezed by. They were a pretty good warm-up, get the legs moving, heart rate just gradually increasing every minute. And then it's funny because you sort of reach a point where you're pretty comfortable and you think you're going to go a long way in the test, and then all of a sudden your legs start to burn. You reach a point where you pass your threshold, the lactic acid starts to build in your legs, your heart rate starts to elevate. You can see here on 260 watts, my heart rate is up at 174, which is pretty high for me, especially on the bike. And then we hit the 300 watt mark, and you can see by my heart rate on that graph at the bottom of the screen, we are deep in the red at this point. I'm clinging on, legs are screaming, can't breathe properly, it's uncomfortable, let's just say that. And it ain't gonna get any easier from here, which is the problem. There's no time for recovery. You are burning matches at an unsustainable rate, which inevitably means you are gonna hit a wall and it's gonna hit you bloody hard. That wall for me was when I hit 360 watts. I was fighting for my life to cling on to 340 watts and get that minute done, which we did. And then as soon as I crossed that, whatever the hell it is, finish line thing, my legs just seized up and I just couldn't pedal any further. Didn't have anything left. You can see my heart rate peaked at 188 beats per minute. That graph on the bottom, the heart rate graph, is beautiful. You can see when we started to leak into the different zones. That's quite interesting. My best minute was 340 watts, and the way your FTP figure is calculated off the back of that is 75% of that, I believe. So that left me with an FTP of 257 watts. 257 watts FTP. Now, I'm not mad about it, but I'm equally not that gassed about it either. I'm sort of middle of the road with it. Meh. It is what it is. I was actually hoping a little bit closer to 270 deep down. That's what I really wanted, but can't cheat the system. I'm clean rider. Got none of that EPO stuff in the system, so this is what we're dealing with. And I think, to be fair, it's a decent baseline to go into 2025 with. I now know the FTP, so I can base my training on that figure. And in terms of like the watts per kilogram, I worked it out before. I'm 75 kg, FTP of 257. So 257 divided by 75 is about just over 3.4. So just over 3.4 watts per kilogram after a year of proper riding without any structured training. So I can't grumble about it. I really can't. Just been having a Google as to what a pro rider's FTP is, or the watts per kilogram, sorry. And it's saying many pro cyclists can produce over 5.5 watts per kilogram. What the f? That would mean I would have to have an FTP of 412 watts for that. That is outrageous. And that's not even the top, like that's not the creme de la creme, that's just average pros. So people like Pogacar and Matej van der Poel, Wout van Aert, etc. are probably pushing well into 6 watts per kilogram. For me, the plan from here is I would love to get closer to 4 watts per kilogram, which I don't know if it is attainable or not. I just don't know enough about cycling and these sort of benchmarks, etc. at the minute. But what I do know is I have a couple of events, fingers crossed, lined up that I'm going to start training towards properly. So the Marmot, which is a Gran Fondo in the Alps, it is a big old day on the bike. It's like 170k in distance and 5k of elevation. And it covers all the like iconic climbs, well, some of the iconic climbs in the Alps. So I think you go up the Galibier, Telegraph, and I think it might even end on Alpe d'Huez. And then I'm also hoping to get involved in L'Etape du Tour, which is the Tour de France Sportif. Fingers crossed we can get something sorted for these, because they are sort of bucket list events for me to get to. And I think it'll be interesting to see how I did, and to have some kind of like event in the distance, cycling wise, that I can train towards would be ideal. I've had enough of these fucking marathons, let me tell you that now. Retired marathon runner me now. Yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more sporting mediocrity in the world of endurance. But yeah, nice one for watching. I'll see you in the next one.